Am I allowed to start any time, or do you want to? Last time I got into trouble for starting too soon.
Oh no, who would do that to you?
I wonder.
Never. Never.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
All good. Okay. Can I do a short intro and away you go?
Yeah.
Is the camera ready? Good. Okay. Well, good evening everyone and welcome to the Metta Centre. And also we are so delighted to have Robert Tomic back again. Robert was here earlier this year to give us a talk on Tibetan Buddhism, and a number of our members have said, we really like Robert, can we have him back? So here he is! So he's back for a 2-week course, and it would be on karma. And the topic is called Being Responsible for Our Happiness, Karma and the World I Wish to Live In, which is beautiful as a topic and very practical as well. So a bit about Robert. Robert has been involved with Tibetan Buddhism for over 23 years, wherein he has received teachings and empowerments from all 4 schools of Tibetan Buddhism, both in Australia and overseas. For 9.5 years, Robert has taught Tibetan Buddhism to everyone who's come his way, and whether it's in people's home or in a classroom setting or in a centre such as the Metta Centre. And for those who are genuinely interested to learn and apply the fundamental steps of Buddhism, then here he is to give us this teaching. So we welcome Robert to, and we invite you to give us this talk.
Thank you very much. As per usual, motivation is very important. For those of us who are in the Mahayana tradition, the first thing for us is to set our motivation, is to say that we're going to listen to these teachings, however simplistic they may be. We will listen to them for the motivation that we will achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And that when we listen to these teachings, we don't really pay attention to the person as such giving the teachings. We listen to the words. When we listen to the words, we listen to the meaning of the words. And when we listen to the meaning of the words, we listen to the definitive meaning as opposed to the interpretive meaning. We should be considering ourselves in the form of a vessel that is a vessel or a container that doesn't have a lid on it, so whatever we listen to can actually penetrate us to retain what we say. A vessel that doesn't have a leaky bottom, or a vessel that is not turned the wrong way up, so that nothing can get in, or whatever gets in passes straight through. We should not be as a vessel that is greasy or contaminated on the inside, from biased, from misconception, so that whatever we hear today will not be based on wrong view or some biased attitude that we may have. So in other words, when we come and listen to any Buddhist teachings, or in fact any spiritual teachings anywhere, with regards, irrespective of religion or philosophy, we have to listen with an open mind, patiently, clearly, calmly, and without any bias or any philosophical prejudice that we have already read anywhere or listened to. So therefore, we will develop the motivation in order to absorb what we need. And we can only learn what at our own level at this moment. You never know, one word could set you off in the right direction somewhere, somehow. So, karma. This subject in the Tibetan tradition is usually given after we have contemplated the disadvantages of being reborn or the disadvantages of lower states of existence. Lower states of existence. What are the lower states of existence? Well, anyone that is born as an animal, as a hungry ghost in the hell realms, and the cold hells, which is something that people actually don't talk about. You don't actually hear that. People forget that there are actually not only the hot hells, but there are the cold hells as well. So once we have understood that the subtle consciousness that we have that is the thing that passes from life to life. Once we understand that this physical form, there is an end, a conclusion to it, there is a use-by date, and that the subtle consciousness that we possess is the thing that will take on another form. It has to. Why must it take on another form? Well, because we haven't done anything or are not doing anything that will purify us from being in a lower state of existence. In other words, being angry, stealing, or any of these kleshas, these deluded forms or mental states, these are all causes for future suffering. So that's why we possess this precious human rebirth. In other words, we have this form. Now, if I don't like something, I can do something about it. I can walk away. Well, it's too hot in here. Oh, I'll turn on the air conditioning. It's too cold. I'll turn off the air conditioning. Right? But if you're an animal, if you exist in a form as an animal, you can't say, well, I give up pulling this wagon. I'm not going to pull this wagon anymore. I've done it for 20 years. I don't want to do this anymore. I give up. One more day of this and that's it. I'm out of here. Well, you can't do that. Somebody owns you. Not to say that human slavery doesn't exist, but nevertheless, as a human, you still have power, mental and physical power, that allows you to extrapolate yourself from suffering. You can understand. Animals and other sentient beings understand that they are suffering, but they can't do anything about it. We can. We can do that. We have the faculties and a strong, powerful mind that allows us to comprehend between black and white, right and wrong, and be able to listen and absorb and implement, in this case, the Buddha's teachings, or any other philosophical or religious belief that you care to follow. Through that strong possession of a precious human rebirth, for us as Buddhists, it is doable, it is a practical possibility to achieve enlightenment. For a lot of people, there's a misunderstanding as to what enlightenment is. Basically, in a nutshell, enlightenment is freedom from samsara, freedom from ever having to be reborn in the cycle of existence again. Those that willingly take on rebirth in samsara are known as bodhisattvas, beings who take on a human form, sometimes not necessarily possessing a human form, in order to help other sentient beings. Okay? Now, being born as a human, and you think you understand between black and between white, what's right, what's wrong, you think that's obvious. But it's not obvious. Why? Well, because we're still in samsara. We're still here. If we really, genuinely knew the difference between right and wrong, how many of us would still be here, would choose to be reborn, would choose to be sick, would choose to go through the process of old age and the horror of death, however you may die? It's not guaranteed we will die peacefully in bed, is it? It's not guaranteed that you will die at the ripe old age of 100. Yeah? It's not guaranteed that you will die 92 in the Playboy mansion like Hugh Hefner recently did. It's not guaranteed. Yeah? So we don't know. We don't know. So in short, we really, when you scratch the surface, with all the attributes that we possess, we still can't distinguish between right and wrong. Why? Because one of the reasons is we don't understand that compound phenomena is impermanent. The only time we understand something is impermanent is when somebody close to us, or somebody famous to us, Tom Petty recently, Hugh Hefner recently, passes away. impermanence. But we don't understand that impermanence is every moment. 1 minute I'm happy, next minute I'm sad. That's impermanent. Yeah? 1 minute I'm having pizza, it's delicious, etc., etc. Next minute, you know, the pizza falls on the floor. I can't finish the rest. Impermanence. It's shifting, it's changing. Compounded phenomena. Compounded. More than one particle. More than one particle. Anything that comes together must come apart. Anything that goes up must come down. Yeah? So it's that coming apart that creates the suffering. It's not this A or B that is suffering. It is the combination of A and B, C, yeah? And then when those two have to fall apart, that's it, because we want it to stay together. We want things always to be permanent and never changing. So that's unrealistic. That's unrealistic. Now, that sounds like, well, hang on a minute, that's philosophy. I don't want philosophy. I want rule on life. How do I govern my life? How do I make myself happy? Well, obviously, through that example, in order to be happy, you have to understand what causes suffering. You have to understand that what our definition of happiness is, for example. So the Buddha said all compounded phenomena are impermanent. And the third of the four seals is that all phenomena are lacking identity or selflessness. Everything is empty of inherent existence. Yeah, hi, please. Everything is empty of inherent existence. So, for us, in a conventional sense, happiness is an illusory state. Now, everybody's read that, everybody talks about that, but what do we mean by that? Well, for example, I'm sitting down here. Yes?
Sorry, what does illusory mean?
Illusory means it's like a mirage, non-existent.
Right.
It's an apparition, if you like.
Okay.
Questions later on.
Okay.
Okay. So for example, our definition of, or our interpretation of happiness in a conventional sense, at the moment I'm sitting down. It's only a matter of time that my legs begin to hurt. My back begins to hurt. Impermanent. Yeah? So then, to stop that, I stand up. Now I'm happy because I'm standing up. But if I stand up long enough, my legs begin to hurt. My back begins to hurt. So I sit down. Now I'm happy. So the happiness is not sitting down, and the happiness is not standing up. It's the transition between A and B. So I'm hungry. I want pizza. I'm going to have pizza. If I have too much pizza, it's no good. Okay? So I have pizza. Maybe I have spicy pizza. Okay, now I want, a cheesecake. Something sweet to counterbalance the savoury. Right? But if I have too much cheesecake, it's no good. So then I have to eat something spicy to counteract it. So the happiness is not the pizza, it's not the cheesecake, and it's not the spicy food. It's the transition between the pizza and the cheesecake. That's the illusion. The illusion is that the cheesecake is bringing me happiness. The illusion is that beautiful or handsome person is the one that is making me happy. It's not, because now I'm alone. I'm so sad, I'm lonely, I need somebody. So you find somebody. It's a problem. You don't get along, whatever it is. So then you're back, I'm happy alone. No, I'm not, I'd rather be in a relationship. No, you're not. Then you find so there is no inherent happiness in one person or the other person. There is no inherent happiness in the cheesecake or the pizza. Or there is no inherent happiness in me sitting down or standing up. If it was inherent happiness, it would mean that however long I sit down, for 1 second, for 1 century, for 1 eon, I will always, forever and ever be happy. That's what it means for it to be permanent happiness. However many cheesecakes I eat, they will forever and ever be good for me. However many relationships and people, friendships, personal relationships, social relationships, work relationships, however many of these relationships you're in, forever and ever and ever and ever, we're always going to be fantastic together. But of course that doesn't work out because we're irritable, etc., etc. So nothing exists permanently. There is no permanent, inherent existence. Everything is compounded. It is dependent. It's a dependent arising. It is dependent upon other causes and conditions. So my happiness, the happiness, conventional happiness, is based on transition. You know, if a Ferrari makes you so wonderful and beautiful, you know, makes my life so fantastic to have that car, how come you got 5 Ferraris? You know, why don't you just have one? And that solves all your problems. How come you got 15 watches? Well, I like watches. This is my favourite watch. Yeah, but why don't you just have one? You know? So from that transition, constantly chasing after, well, it's this watch, it's that watch, it's that watch, it's that person, it's this person, it's that person. You know, always, personally, I'm always surprised by people who 1 minute they're with this person, 2 months later they're with another person, then another person. It's just like basically bargain shopping all the time, you know. It's amazing. Because what they're after, it's not the person that they're after, yeah? It's the thrill of finding somebody new and discovering them for 2 seconds in geological time. And then discarding them, or in turn being discarded themselves, you know, and then they go on to somebody else. And so it's this constant craving for relationships, for pizza, for sweets, etc., watches, luxury items. That's our definition of happiness. That's the capitalistic, commercial world that we live in. Because if you have enough money to own property, you know, you won't have one house. You're going to have 3, 4, and slowly the whole thing snowballs. Yeah? And so it's not owning the property that's the happiness. It's the thrill of, wow, now I have the resources to buy another one. So it's the thrill of something new, something exotic. And then once you buy that, oh, I'll get something else. So it's the same thing. The principle is the same. Yeah? Because if you really love one house, if that was really the thing that was going to give you happiness, then you would only have one house. It would be permanent happiness. Yeah? But it doesn't work that way. So we can't tell the difference between, for the Buddha says, we can't tell the difference between right and wrong. We don't know what happiness is because we're under the delusion that impermanent things are permanent. We're under the delusion that suffering is pleasure, because if I eat too much pizza, you know, yeah, I'm happy, you know. People going to the doctors, etc., because we eat too much, because we can't stop, because we're still looking for that thrill. As long as I'm eating, I'm happy. You know, as long as I'm in a relationship, I'm happy. Even though that relationship, well, you know, I can tolerate that person, you know, but still I'm forcing myself to be happy. Impermanence. Things are shifting and changing all the time. Yeah. Then there is, you know, thinking that the deluded thought, thinking that unattractive things are attractive. That concept is more pertinent for people who are monks or nuns, generally speaking. Because for us, as I just said, you know, with regards to watches and cars and things like that, those things may look attractive, but you have to do a lot of things in order to get those attractive objects. And not only that, karmically speaking, you have to sacrifice a lot of your time and effort in order to maintain those objects. So you have to maybe cheat, maybe you have to lie, pretend. You know, just because I wear a fancy watch does not mean I'm some kind of Wall Street guy that owns mega properties or whatever, but maybe I'll lie in order to impress somebody at a nightclub or something. So being attached to one object leads to other problems. False representation in this case. Then there is the subtle one, which is the deluded thought, thinking that those things that lack inherent existence have inherent existence. That's the big one. That is the cause of all suffering. We think that all these objects, ourselves included, which we ourselves are regarded as compound phenomena because my body is based on aggregates. Yeah? And my name, my identity is just a label that is attached to this body. I can change my name anytime I want. Many of us have nicknames. So which is the real you? It is just a label on this body. Now, I don't know any of your names, pretty much. Yeah? So if you really inherently existed, as soon as I see you, I would know exactly who you were, your history, your name, everything about you. But we don't. That changes as well. So it's impermanent. And of course, this physical form will eventually have to go. I will have to die. Yeah. So then what happens to my identity then? And that's the suffering of death. So, all these things, we have to have at least some kind of understanding before we can even begin to talk about karma. Karma basically is, the true nature of karma basically resides in the mind of the Buddha. Only the Buddha can know the exact, or an enlightened being can know the exact causes and conditions, for example, of the pattern of a peacock's feather. Well, it's genetic. Yeah, okay, from a scientific point of view. But what are the exact environmental causes that how this bird evolved millions of years ago? So there is extremely subtle karma that only an enlightened being can ascertain. It's beyond our comprehension. Then there is subtle karma, which we can only infer through the Buddhist teachings. Then there is what would be karma on a gross level, where you trip over and you say, well, look, that lump in the road caused you to trip. That's the obvious. That's where we reside. That's where we sentient beings can actually see karma in operation. You get angry, somebody gets angry at you. We can see that. We don't need a Buddha to really tell us that. You know? So those are the three aspects of karma. There's the gross, on the gross level, which we can see, the subtle level, which we need scriptural citation in order to infer. For example, you know, somebody might have got into an argument or something like that with a family member. And we can infer from that, well, you know, this is something that goes back in the family history. And then even beyond this lifetime it goes back. Yeah? So we use the Buddhist teachings of rebirth and karma in order to infer that this argument that this person's had, these two people have, has been a lifelong argument. Not only this life, but many lifetimes. The extremely subtle karma would be the Buddha will tell you 3,000, 100 million trillion lifetimes ago, this person stole something from this, whatever, blah, 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 blah. They will give the exact specifics. Not only for that life, but for every single life until the present, should you have the time to listen to all the coverage. That's the way it exists. Now, how and why should we believe what the Buddha says? Again, this is a subject that goes a little bit further on, previous to the subject of karma. What makes us a Buddhist? Why do we have faith in the Buddha? So, being born a Buddhist into a Buddhist family, does that make you a Buddhist? No. Giving food and offerings to a statue of the Buddha, a picture of the statue of the Buddha, does that make you a Buddhist? No. So what makes you a Buddhist? What makes you a Buddhist is having faith in the three jewels, the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha, having faith and understanding of past and future birth, the law of reincarnation, and having faith and understanding of the law of cause and effect, karma. Those are the three criteria, the basic criteria that constitute a Buddhist, somebody who has faith. So, by having faith in the Buddha, I was wanted to say, talk about valid cognition. How do we know something is valid? In other words, how do we know what the Buddha is saying is valid? How do we know that? Well, in Tibetan Buddhism, which is my lineage, the way we can tell something is valid, our perceptions and all these things, how we can tell that something is valid is, number one is through our senses. We can touch it, see it, hear it, taste it. Number two is through inference. We can infer something is happening. So if you see smoke, you can logically deduce, say, well, looks like there's something burning in the distance there. We can infer that. You don't have to be over there to feel the heat. You can say, maybe it's going to happen. If you leave something on the floor somewhere awkwardly, maybe somebody is going to trip on that. I'm inferring there's going to be an accident here. Okay? So we use an educated guess, if you like. And the third one is through scriptural knowledge, which is we use the Buddha's teachings to say, well, the Buddha said this, the Buddha said that, so therefore that's it, end of the game. He said it, that's the way it is. Why is that so important? That is important because if you have faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, then you will know that the Buddha is pretty much like an explorer or a guide who's gone off and has come back to explain to us what's on the other side that we can't see. So the Buddha says, I've seen what's going on in the lower realms. You don't want to go there. These are the reasons, A, B, C, D, for how you were reborn in the lower state of existence. Okay? So you have to develop through study, through logic and reason, a faith in the Buddha. You can't just say, well, you know, my parents are Buddhists, so of course I'm Buddhist. You know, I've been giving flowers and offerings to the Buddha since I was born, basically. Well, okay, that's nice. You got a head start again, but it doesn't really. I'm talking about realization. I'm not talking about appearances. I'm not talking about facade. You know, I'm talking about actual things that change us and change us for the better. So we have faith in the Buddha because we have, up to this point, put into practice what the Buddha has taught. So when the Buddha starts talking about these subtle variations of karma, things that are beyond our comprehension, we have to take his word for it. And in order to understand karma deeper, we need to deepen our understanding of what it means to be an enlightened being. So it's interconnected. So if you want to understand karma more, you need to go back a little bit and understand how the Buddha became a Buddha, what it means to be a Buddha, the 32 major and the 80 minor markings of a Buddha. Like, for example, in Sanskrit, the ushnish, the top crown. What is the karmic cause for that? What did the Buddha have to do? How much merit did he have accumulate in order to have that? Golden colour. The Dhamma chakra on the hands and the feet. What is the karmic cause for things like that? These are the things that we need to study before we can really get onto the subject of karma. Because it'll help you to understand karma more. Why? Because your faith in the Buddha will be a little bit more deeper. So therefore when the Buddha says, you say, yes sir. Because you know from your own personal practice and experience that they didn't let you down in the beginning in terms of the subject matter. So therefore they won't let you down now at this part. In other words, somebody has baked you a cake, right? One person has baked you a cake. and they're giving you a slice of that cake and say, yes, I like it, it's very nice. So from that one slice, you can infer that the rest of the cake is going to be good too. If it was made at the same time by the same person, baked in the same way. One side of the cake is the same as the other side of the cake. And all sides, up, down, etc., etc. So here too, we can use valid cognition, inference. If the Buddha said this, we can infer something else as well, even though we don't have practical experience of it. Does that make sense? That's how we develop trust in a teacher, in this case, the Buddha. And from trust comes faith. So you use logic to develop trust, and from trust, faith. Blind faith, you're only going to get into trouble. Because as soon as you see somebody in robes, that's it. Have my money, have this, but you don't know. You don't know who this person is. You don't know who I am. So it's very, very, very dangerous. This is another subject matter in terms of teacher, finding a teacher. This is a subject matter that goes well beyond the subject of karma. I'm getting to karma. Which is basically, if you spiritually put yourself in the hands of somebody, they can do more damage to you than any personal relationship you have ever been in, irrespective of how broken a heart you have had. You may have even had to get a heart transplant because your heart was so broken by that person. He or she was so beautiful, whatever it is, and you've literally had to get a new heart, whatever. That's peanuts compared to what a charlatan spiritual teacher can do to you. Because they can take advantage of you emotionally, financially, sexually, intellectually. You can become their slave. Not only this lifetime, but many, many, many future lifetimes. You will be misled down the path. You won't be able to tell the difference between the true Buddhist teachings and the fake Buddhist teachings. And that kind of stuff is very, very rampant nowadays. So you have to be extremely, extremely careful. Razor sharp. And in the Tibetan tradition, it says you observe the teacher for a period of time. Years even. Years. Are you doing what you're saying? Are you walking the talk? Well, hang on, why are you smoking? And you tell, what the hell, what? 1 minute you're yelling at somebody, next minute you're sitting in lotus position like you're a saint. It disturbs my mind. And if it disturbs my mind, I need to find another teacher. So just those simple guidelines. And that in itself is a template to all relationships. Maybe the most beautiful person in Hollywood, but you disturb my mind. You know, it doesn't mean it's going to be a beautiful relationship, you know. So the same thing with work relationships, etc., business relationships. Yeah, it sounds like a good idea, but a bit of a shady character. I don't think I want to get involved with that person, you know. So the subject of guru devotion or teacher, finding a teacher, is a very complex process. It is the biggest psychological challenge for those who are serious on the path. It's the biggest psychological challenge you will ever have. And that's a subject matter that His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all the other High Lamas avoid talking about in the Western tradition to Western students, simply because it seems like it can be easily misunderstood, misconstrued, saying that, well, you know, I'm the Lama, you do now what I tell you to do. It can be very easily misunderstood. It's a very, very difficult subject, and it's a subject that is usually introduced in the subject of when we take refuge. So all these things, all these subjects that I've been just highlighting are things that we must already have some kind of understanding before we begin on the subject of karma. You just can't walk into the subject of karma and say, oh yeah, you do this and that, you know, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, and that's karma. Well, it is in its simplistic sense, it is karma, you know. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that in order to really get the benefit and understand how we must extract happiness from whatever little time we have left is to have a little bit of a, there are prerequisite subjects that we must have. Faith in the Buddha, you know, confidence in the teachings that we are being given, yeah? Understanding that this life that we have is very, very precious to us, yeah? Where we're going. So there's an old Gadampa, the famous Gadampas, the early, in old Tibet, the famous precursors to the Gelugpa tradition. The famous Gadampas said, if you want to know what you were in your previous life, look at yourself today, in this life. Okay? If you want to know what you're going to be in your future lifetime, immediately from this life, look at the way you're thinking. That will determine what happens next. And so, as I said right at the beginning here, we can't distinguish between right and wrong. We can't distinguish between happiness and suffering. Because from a Buddhist point of view, all those things that cause us suffering, from our conventional point, that's what happiness is. Happiness is money. Happiness is all these relationships that we have. Happiness is taking from somebody and keeping it for yourself. Happiness is pretending to be something that you're not. But from a Buddhist point of view, the worst thing you can do, the biggest lie that you can say in Buddhism is to say, I'm the greatest teacher that there ever lived. I am the best. I have these realizations. I know all this. I know all that. And that happened once to Jomo Atisha. Atisha was one of the teachers that was invited from India to introduce, one of the teachers that was invited from India to introduce Buddhism to Tibet. And when he was at his root monastery in India, Vikramalashila Gompa, he had such pride. Oh, I'm the best scholar in all of India. I'm the best Buddhist. No, but I know all the scriptures. I know everything backwards. And then one night he had a dream, and in that dream somebody showed him basically a warehouse full of textbooks he had never even heard of. And then the following morning he calmed down. So for us, emotionally now, speaking on a psychological point of view, karma, from my own experience, seeing other people and interacting with other people over the years, it's a very difficult, well, it's a tricky subject to talk about to people, karma, because why? Look carefully the way we live. We're always hiding our emotions. We're always really trying to avoid responsibility. We're always trying not to be singled out for either good reasons or bad reasons. Yeah? We're always on the defensive. Always we're on the defensive. So, in our society, when you look at the talk show hosts and all this kind of stuff, right? The people that get the biggest claps are, one, people who lose the most weight. That goes to show you what an affluent society we live in. That anybody who's lost weight is regarded as a champion. Woohoo! You're fantastic. I mean, you're living in a paradise. We live in the God realm here. That is your biggest problem? And somebody is exalted because of that? Okay, there's that. The next one is somebody who admits that they're wrong. That's the next person who gets the biggest clap. Look, I'm sorry, I did that. It was wrong. I didn't mean to do that. You know? That's the person who gets out of the bubble, who's not running with the rest of the herd and pretending, you know, everything's fine, everything's this, whatever. Or somebody who just says, hey, hang on, stop, I don't get it. Why is everybody doing this? I don't want to do this. So we're always on the defensive. Now you're being introduced to the law of cause and effect, where the Buddha is saying, it's all your fault. What? I don't want to hear about it, you know. My parents have told me all my life it's all my fault. My teacher at school told me it's all my fault. I've come into a Buddhist class to tell me it's all okay. I don't want you to remind me of my father. I don't want you to remind me of my mother. I don't want you to remind me of my evil cousin, like the Buddha had an evil cousin, as you may know. If you don't know, you need to go home, you need to read up about the Buddha's life. Why don't you know that? 10 points if you know his name. 10 points if you know how he died.
Yeah.
How did he die?
Because it first opened up and saw.
Okay, there you go. So somebody's been doing their homework. Wonderful. Okay, now alright, so those little things, we need to know those things because you need to base your knowledge back to Scripture. It has to go back to Scripture. Yeah? If you can't relate it back to the Buddha's life or the Buddha's teachings, it's not Buddhist. It's not kosher. And the Buddha didn't say kosher. Okay? So that's how you can tell if somebody's teaching right or wrong, or if your friends are talking. You just made that up, didn't you? Where did the Buddha say that? Well, come on, I don't want to listen to that, you know? Okay. So, back to karma. So, the Buddha is saying, it's all your fault. Okay? Now, if we are emotionally a little bit, if we really want to run away from responsibility, and it's logical, there's nothing wrong with that. Because if we've been abused emotionally or physically or whatever it is our whole life, the last thing you want to do is listen, it's all your fault, you've done it. Okay? Even if you say it in a compassionate way, which hopefully it's coming out compassionately, you know, you still don't want to hear it, because even if I say, listen, we need to take responsibility, all you're hearing is your father or your mother or whoever authority figure abusing you. Now what happens is, because you come as a contaminated vessel, as I said right at the beginning, now you come and see me as an authority figure, and in your mind, authority figures are only there to abuse you, because that's the way you've been treated. Cause and effect, karma. That's why our motivation has to be pure when we start and listen to this teaching or any other Buddhist teaching, because we are carrying so much rubbish with us. Just like those shoes behind you, you take them off, and all those worldly concerns stay with your shoes. You come as a clean vessel to this Dharma class and to all Dharma classes. So hopefully, when you go and listen to a teaching by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or any of the other High Lamas in all the other Dharma traditions, you will remember that. And so, just as an aside, so that usually when I ask people, wow, you went to see His Holiness, like a 10-day teaching or whatever, what did you learn? Wow, I just love being around the Dalai Lama. What did you learn? So, are you a Dharma student or are you a Dharma groupie? Groupies are only there for the vibes. Dharma students are there to learn. Groupies are there only, it's just wonderful to be hanging around with the Dalai Lama. But what did you learn? In other words, in Tibetan they say it's just like teaching Buddhism, the Dharma to a dog. They just sleep there and they just enjoy the vibes, the atmosphere. The dog doesn't get anything. You know? Maybe in 1 trillion years something will happen. But it's a waste of life in terms of a human point of view. We need to use the mind. The karmic consequences of not using the mind is if you're born as an animal. There's the dog. He did that, he was probably a monk that slept during the teachings. Yeah. Wearing robes does not somehow put a force field around you, and everybody from the Buddha down is subject to the law of cause and effect. Everybody from the Buddha down is subject to the laws of cause and effect. Yeah? That's something that we need to really, really see. Yeah? So, for us, the biggest obstacle is this emotional, psychological baggage that we carry with us that obstructs us. And that's, from my experience, that's the most difficult thing about teaching karma to anybody, is because, well, listen, you kind of like need to stop swearing a little bit. No, don't tell me what to do. Well, that's it. That's the end of the story. People want help, but they don't want to be told what to do. So this requires an inner contemplation within us to really, really look carefully. Do I just want to be like the dog and just listen to the teachings and it sounds great? As soon as you walk out of here, what will you remember? What will you take with you? In other words, there's a good chance that you would be like a pot with a lid on it. Nothing goes inside. If you're somebody, as I said, that has that psychological issue with authority, and you're regarding me now as a bit of a authority figure, or authority figures are no good, then you are a container that's greasy on the inside. Whatever virtue is put in there is just soiled with your misconceived conceptions of me in this case. Okay? So you need to answer that for yourself. It only works on a one-on-one basis. Buddhism can only be taught each individual person because each individual person has a different characteristics, different karma. So as you can see, I haven't even begun to talk about karma. And this huge trainload of information and that you need to process just to even really get the benefits of what karma is. And not just walk away here saying, oh, that was interesting, let's go and have pizza. Feel free to do that. You are more than willing to, more than free to do something like that. But I don't want anybody to leave here empty-handed. Because it would be a waste, not of time, but it would be a waste of precious life, human life. So precious human rebirth means not only you're born as a human, but you have a karmic connection to the Buddha's teachings. You have somewhere in the past interacted with the Buddha's teachings, and that is now ripening in this lifetime. You are willing and able to put those things into practice and utilize them. That means that you have a precious human rebirth. You can actually now really begin to walk on the path to enlightenment, to free yourself from all suffering. Not only that, but once you were in the Mahayana tradition, you can actually use that in order to help other sentient beings. Through your own experience and realizations, you can actually be of sincere and genuine benefit to others. Wow. You can't buy that. Nobody can. You can't inherit that. Only you. That is your personal karma. Okay? Now, you can go up into the mountains and I'll see you in 3 months' time. You can meditate on that. More than enough information. Yeah? So, when next time around, because this is finishing now, next time around, next class, should you decide to come back, or as they say, mission impossible, should you choose to accept this mission. If you choose to come back for really going into the subject of karma, then you have to think carefully. It showed the Buddha's teachings clearly point the finger at you. The spotlight is directly on you immediately from the very first moment. And the Buddha is saying, this is who you are, this is what you're doing, this is where you're going. This is where you've come from. This is what's happening now. And if you continue this way, this is where you're going. So sometimes I like to wish there was like a karmic stock exchange, to see where your karma, how much karma you got, how my share's doing in this, whatever. I've done so many bad things today. I've said this, I've thought that, whatever. Sell, sell, sell. Buy more. Good. If we had that, the world would be a totally different place. But unfortunately for us, we'd say, BHP this, how much of this, how much of this, how much of this, yeah. But the old Gishis in the Gadampa tradition had a very, very nice thing, and maybe you could do something the same if you so choose to take on this mission, Jim. They used to have black stones and white stones. And if they would say something, one black. If they would think something bad, another black one. And then at the end of the day, how big's the pile? But you can, what I'm trying to get at here is you can see that there's no place to hide. You have to be brutally honest with yourself without punishing yourself. And that's another psychological trait that we have here. We always like to stab the knife into ourselves and, oh, look what you've done. But, well, that's another thing that the Buddha's teaching us here, to look at ourselves objectively and say, have you done that? Yes, I have. So there's remorse but no guilt. Because if you have guilt, you'll never progress. Why? Because you say, well, I'm no good at that. I'm a bad person. The Buddha doesn't like me. Nobody likes me. Forget it. It's never. I'm just going to whoosh, off they go, and they get into depression, and depression leads to other more sinister and darker aspects of the mind. You'll never get that person out again because the karma is so heavy. You'll never be able to get them back into a positive attitude of mind. So guilt is a no-no in Buddhism. Remorse. Yes, I've done that. Yes, I've thought that. I've said those things. And you feel bad about it. But that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Now you see it, that it's a bad thing. Nobody's judging you. We're just saying, Buddhists, we are just saying, that's bad. Have you experienced that? Yes, I have. Do you have regrets about that? Well, not until you just told me. Now I do. Okay, well, please try not to do it or diminish your behavior. For example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, one of his teachers, the late Kyabche Ling Rinpoche, you take the Pratimoksha vows or the refuge vows, sometimes they're known as the 5 refuge vows. And one of the 5 refuge vows is no taking of intoxicants or mind-altering substances. Obviously, if you want to meditate and improve the mind, you don't drink alcohol, you don't take LSD. Unless you want some kind of special meditation. No special meditation here, only traditional. So, His Holiness said that one of Ling Rinpoche's things was, when he would give the refuge vows, the Pratimoksha vows, he knew that people were attracted to alcohol. So you can't take people away from alcohol if they don't want it. You can't change unless you want to change, okay? So one of the provisions that Ling Rinpoche would say, okay, just diminish your intake of alcohol. That in itself creates the karmic cause to stop drinking. Slowly. Okay, not this much, then half, then less, and less. Cause and effect. But no, because we live in a very rapid world, in a very instantaneous world, totally wrong, of course. We like to think, well, I'm going to stop immediately. I go here, I'm going to read a couple of Dharma books, and immediately I'm going to have happiness. Well, no. Cause and effect. Karma. That's the thing. If we can understand just that, that in itself is enough for us to change our lifestyle, to change your perceptions on the world, to be a better person. Without having to meditate, without having to do any retreats, without having to go on pilgrimages, and without having to listen to big grand lectures. That's more than enough information you have for at least 12 to 18 months. So, between this time and next time, if you should come back, observe carefully, read up on any book that you have on karma that you feel comfortable with. But more importantly, the homework is to observe yourself and see, do I have the inner resources to change? Because what I'm going to be asked to do is obviously is to change. And that's really what all spiritual practice is. Learning what we need to adopt and what we need to abandon. So what you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to abandon in order to take on the Buddha's teaching? You must take something out to put something in. But the way we live, again, consumer-based, we only take. Gimme, 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 gimme. Well, hey, what are you going to give me as the Dharma teacher? What are you going to give me? Well, I'll give you money. I don't want money. Well, I'll give you respect. I don't want respect. You keep it to yourself. What does the Dharma teacher want? The Dharma teacher, the Buddha, wants to know that you're going to put into practice what you've been taught. So the ultimate way to repay the teacher's kindness is to put into practice what you've been taught. And we don't need clairvoyance to see who's doing what or whatever, because what you need to do, just like with Guru devotion, we observe somebody over a period of time. Are they still swearing? Are they still lying? Are they still stealing? You just observe. And then you decide, do you still want to be friends with this person? And then you see, you work your way through life. So the thing is, by taking refuge in the three jewels, you always keep them in your heart or above your head, wherever is easier. And they're the things that you take and meander through life. People will come and go, situations will fluctuate, but your happiness is dependent. You, in this case, because you have a connection with the Buddha Dharma, on the Buddha's teachings. The more you understand the Buddha's teachings, the deeper you place it within your heart in this life, the easier it would be in the next lifetime, and so on and so on. So the reason why you have such an easy life this lifetime, by world standards, we have a very easy life here in Australia, very easy, is because in previous lifetimes you have definitely done something related to the Buddha's teachings, and you have created some kind of virtue now that you're doing this. So, but now that you're reborn and you're experiencing that, karmically, that karma is now spent. It's finished. It won't happen again unless you create the karmic cause for it to happen again. But we're too busy having pizza and riding around in Ferraris with Hollywood starlets, being too distracted by appearances and impressions and having to create an image. And so we're spending this karma constantly. And then at the time of death, what do we got? Or when you're old and sick, even before death happens, what happened to all those good times we had? We have done nothing to assure ourselves of future happiness. And one of the criteria of seeing whether somebody is practicing the Dharma over a long period, you may know somebody who's been attending Dharma centers for 10, 20 years, whatever it is, and you observe them. As they get older, doesn't matter if they're monks or nuns, especially monks and nuns actually, because they're in a position of responsibility, and you observe them. Monks, nuns, lay people, and you observe these people. And you say, are they getting happier or more cantankerous the older they become? If they're becoming more argumentative and cantankerous, then you know there's something wrong there, even if they're a monk or nun. But if they're becoming more calm, and just more relaxed, more just lackadaisical, whatever, you know something's going on there. It's not just old age, it's that they're practicing. And their practice now is ripened after 20, 30, 40, a lifetime of practice. It's now, that's why when you meet those high lamas, they don't have to say anything, just being in their presence, and you're just like, all your troubles just wash away. They don't have to say anything, because it's all in here. And that you are now reaping the benefits of, it's a byproduct of their practice. That's what it is. A lifetime of meditation, chanting, prayers, studying, etc., etc. The byproduct is, they haven't even opened their mouth yet. That's how we can tell who's really walking the talk. Yeah? And so you have to be very, very careful of that. If somebody's constantly trying to boss you around, you know, I'm this and this, whatever, and the years go by and they're becoming just more and more nervous and fidgety, that's just wrong, really. You have to be very careful. So that's what we have to first observe in ourselves. If we've been practicing the Dharma, you have to now look within and say, well, I've been practicing for a while, or I've been interested for a while, and what have I got out of it? How do I feel about this? You need to see, you know, what you need to adopt from the Buddha's teachings and what you need to abandon from yourself. Okay, now we're going to do the Chenrezig purification practice. And Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion, in the Tibetan tradition, in the Chinese tradition, that are known as Kuan Yin. And just as a brief introduction, the only way we can really genuinely purify any action in body, speech and mind, even murder, is using the four opponent powers, which is strong regret in what we have done, faith, in this case faith in Buddha Chenrezig, as we are visualizing and reciting the mantra, then the promise not to do these actions again. Excuse me. And then after that is the antidote. The antidote is in two aspects, which is the general antidote and the specific antidote. The general antidote is we do any Dharma practice that we do is an antidote to all of suffering. So offering flowers, food to the Buddha, prostrations, reading scriptures, mantra, all these things are general antidotes to the suffering of samsara. Specific antidote is if you've been upset at somebody, for example, through speech, you strongly regret what you've done. Specific antidote is promising, I'm not going to do that again. To the best, but you must say to the best of my ability, because you are going to do it again. So by saying, I'm never going to do it again, you're lying. You don't want to do that to an object of refuge, in this case, Buddha Chenrezig. So you say, to the best of my ability, I'm not going to do that again. In other words, I'm going to try. I'm going to diminish. So that's specific. So, and same thing, if you've stolen something, the specific antidote is, well, I'm not going to steal something, etc., etc. That's specifics. So, the Buddha Chenrezig is a manifestation of all the compassion of all the Buddhas in one physical form. If you could see the Buddha's compassion, all the Buddhas that ever were, are, or ever will be, are manifested in the physical form of Buddha Chenrezig. 4 arms, holding a wish-fulfilling jewel, which is the ultimate, which is the ultimate, how do you say, ultimate symbol of a bodhisattva, which is basically whatever you want, that's what you get, provided it's for the benefit of others. In other words, if you're not practicing for others, forget it. You want money just for yourself, forget it. You want money for helping somebody, whatever, there's a good chance you'll get it. Yeah, there must be a Mahayana motivation. Yeah. Then in the left hand, the second left hand, you have the lotus, yeah? And then in the second right hand, you have the crystal mala, rosary bead. Yeah? Chenrezig, on their shoulders, they have an antelope hide. That antelope, which I always forget what the name is, that antelope symbolizes, there's a special antelope that lives in the Himalayas that can't stand to hear people arguing or bickering. It always stops arguments. So by symbolically, Well, for example, I said that to somebody years ago. I said, well, you might find that hard to believe. And they said, no, my cat does that when my husband and I get into an argument. And I thought, no, you're right. I know cats that do that too. They get upset when people argue in the family. So, there you go. It's based on fact, you know. So that antelope hide that he has, it's not a real antelope because Chenrezig would not have dead animals on his shoulders. Yeah, it's an illusory thing. It's symbolic, symbolizing that he's bringing peace and harmony to wherever Buddha Chenrezig is manifest. That's what that symbolizes. Yeah. So if you can visualize that, that'll be nice. If you can't visualize that, if that's too much, then just visualize above your head as we're reciting the mantra. Visualize like a very large, like a snowball, if you like, that is white with a slight tinge of pink to it, a very rose quartz, vivid pink, salmony pink colour to it. It has that kind of pinkish white colour to it. And visualize that snowball is the essence of Buddha Chenrezig. If that's easy to visualize, that's okay too. Yeah. Now, from Buddha Chenrezig's heart, we visualize like white light and nectar coming. We visualize Buddha Chenrezig up above our heads and like a waterfall coming down and straight into us, washing us on the inside. And then from the crown of our head down into our body, the white light and nectar comes in, and just like a container, it goes in, and then it fills up, and then it overflows. So it's the same thing with this. The white light and nectar comes in into our body, comes up, and comes out of the crown of our head. Through that, so please be careful that because this is the first time you're doing it, you won't be able to do everything clearly. But just feel, you won't be able to do the 4 opponent powers all at once. But just feel, just have strong regret and just have strong reliance upon Buddha Chenrezig, that they're there to help you. And just have strong regret in everything you've done and said and thought about in terms of hurting people. Not only in this life, but previous lifetimes. Okay? That's the minimum. And all those negative things just come up and out. So you feel like you're vomiting, like it's all coming out of your mouth, out of your ears, out of your tear ducts, out of between the fingernails and toenails, out of the lower parts of your body as if you have diarrhea, out of the pores of your skin, all this black oozy liquid that is being flushed out through Buddha Chenrezig's blessings. All those negative things, black liquid is your negative karma. That's all the things you've said towards the Sangha and towards the normal lay practitioners. That's all the things you've thought about wrongly, all the things you've done in terms of killing, in terms of encouraging other people to kill and steal, sexual misconduct, etc., etc. All that. So, all that we think about and we feel very, very strongly. It's like, think of a black iceberg inside you. And as you're reciting and as the white light and nectar coming in, that iceberg bits and pieces are falling off. And then as it falls off, it's pushed out of your system. It's flushed out of your system. Yeah? Okay, so for the first 21 times, don't worry, I'll keep count. You just stay focused to the best of your ability and visualize as clearly as possible Buddha Chenrezig. You must clearly feel that Buddha Chenrezig is really in front of you. You must have strong faith in that, and you must have strong regret in what you have done. Yeah? And then feel strongly that all these things are being purged from your system. So first of all, we'll 21 times out loud, just follow me, we'll say it 21 times out loud, and then we'll go through for a short period reciting it to ourselves, not too loud to disturb anybody beside you. Om Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum. And then I'll come back and we'll say 21 times again, out loud, together as a group, and then we'll finish off. Yeah. And then when I say, at the end, when I say Om Mani Padme Hum, you visualize that last white light and nectar, that strong waterfall, if you like, flushes that last part of all your negatives out. And at that point, you meditate on being free of all karmic obscurations. You're like a vase that's clean on the inside and on the outside. No stains, no fingerprints, nothing left anymore. You're totally clear of all negativities. Okay? Om mani bebe hum ha 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 mani bebe Om mani bebe hum ha 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 mani bebe hum om mani bebe hum. Now, with all virtuous action, if we just walk out this door here now, somebody kicks you and you get angry, finish. Just like somebody throwing a match in a mountain full of straw, finished. So in order for this virtue that we've just created by listening to the Dhamma, doing a little bit of practice, reciting the Chinese mantra, etc., etc., in order for that to be of benefit, cause and effect, we need to dedicate that merit. So dedication in this case means, it's like they say in the scriptures, they say it's like you know, if you have a drop of water and you put it in the ocean, which drop is yours? Can you bring that drop back? So if we dedicate this merit for the benefit of all sentient beings, as long as there's sentient beings in the universe, and until they achieve enlightenment, that's as long as our virtue will last. So by dedicating this merit to all sentient beings, may all sentient beings be as fortunate as us, have a precious human rebirth, come in contact with the true Buddhist teachings, yeah? May they develop unshakable faith in the triple gem, walk on the path to enlightenment, achieve perfect enlightenment. And all Dharma teachers in all traditions, may they have a long life, good health and happiness. And all those who have passed, may they quickly return to us. And may we always have the karma to be of benefit to them in order to teach the Dharma. And in order to, may it be of benefit to them in order to practice the Dharma. And may we be of benefit to encourage others to come in contact with the Dharma. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yes.
Sorry,
what's your name?
Darren.
Darren. Hi, Darren.
Yeah.
I'm Robert.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, you mentioned some time back about someone that maybe has depression, and deep depression.
Sure.
That they may be stuck in that depression for a very long time. Did you mean for their lifetime on Earth, or because personally I've suffered from depression and I pulled myself out of it, and so it wasn't an ongoing thing. I was able to free myself.
Well, I would never wish anybody to be depressed, but unfortunately that's just being human. It's being alive, because animals suffer from depression too. Just being sentient, really. That's the byproduct of existence, if you like. But it's a cyclical thing. It's cause and effect again. If you're depressed, then if you're listening to depressive music, there's a good chance that if you're depressed, your environment is depressing. If your environment is depressing, there's no way of improvement. There's no light. So it's cause and effect again, isn't it? So I know, for me personally, if you want to talk about depression, when I'm feeling low, I notice the quality of music that I select is different than I don't. For example, when I'm feeling just a little bit, it's cyclical, judging by the moon as well, Not necessarily something bad happening in your life. It's just the cycles. And I notice that for me, when I'm feeling a little bit down on the down, I tend to, I'm sorry, I don't want to sound pretentious or anything like that, but the music that draws me is like Dmitri Shostakovich's music, a Russian composer, right? And to me, just the way he's writing his stuff, whatever, that's when it gets me. But when I'm not low, his music, I need to listen to something else, like ABBA or whatever it is. What is just something poppy, whatever. But whenever I'm low, that music actually, it doesn't bring me down. It actually answers the question of being low. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It just keeps me there. It doesn't bring me down further.
No.
It just keeps me there. It's almost like a parachute sort of thing. Yeah. And then I remember reading a biography on Shostakovich. And Shostakovich, guess what? He suffered from depression. So obviously he has to write from his own experience, and that's the thing. And so that music is going to be coming from a depressive mind. So when you're depressed, you're going to be drawn to depressive music, you know, the vibes, if you like.
The thing that struck me was that you, the way that I, you know, felt it implied that someone would stay in that state, you know, for an extremely long period of time, you know, while they're earthbound.
There is that.
And I didn't know, you know, and I personally dispute that, because I do believe people can, you know, they can hit rock bottom, but they can rise again, you know, on this earth, in this lifetime.
Sure, absolutely they can.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, from the Buddhist point of view, what the Buddha is saying is that it's difficult for us, in fact, it's impossible for us to get out of suffering without the help of somebody who has freed themselves from suffering.
Right.
So that's the context I'm giving it. Right,
I got it.
Yes, you'll be depressed, we'll be this, whatever, until somebody who's not depressed comes and says, hey Robert, come on up. Yeah, you need somebody, because if we were both depressed, we're going down.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I'm saying. So if we're both going down, we're going to stay for a very, very long time down. And that's what the whole thing is with samsara. We're in samsara. How do we get out? We've been here for such a long, long time. And then, of course, this again goes back to the rarity of the Buddha's teachings, the preciousness of the Buddha's teachings.
Yes.
So when you get the proper teacher, when all the karmic causes and conditions come together, you get the right teacher, you're mature of mind, you're in that time of life when you're open, susceptible to it, boom, 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 everything comes together. Right, I get it. And that's what I'm trying to allude to here with regards to people who are emotionally maybe a little bit low at this point in their life. And if they're listening to a subject of karma, no, I just want to recite a Chenrezig, sit in a corner somewhere, a bright light, and just Om Mani Padme Hum. And that's fine, okay? Because you can't force somebody, especially psychology, no way. You'll do more damage. If that's what you want, if you want the Dharma as just as a therapy, fine. But that's not the way I'm teaching it here.
Right.
Okay? You can't do that. That's why I'm giving you the Chenrezig practice. If you don't want to come back ever again, at least it gives you an introduction to the four opponent powers, which I just said. You can read about that now. You can study it. So you've got some cause, all right? You can take it away. You can do the Chenrezig visualizations and do that. There's nothing wrong with that. So eventually, it'll take a little bit longer, but eventually you'll come back again to the subject of karma with a much more clearer mind and understanding. That's what you need to understand. It's going to take time. Yes, I'm suffering. Yeah, but I want you to stop it right now. Can't do that right now. The reason why you're in pain now is because we've done something. That karma is ripening. But at least you're still alive. You've got the mind. Now you've got to be patient and say, okay, I just got to go with it. I've got to let this karma ripen. When it's done, when the eczema subsides, yeah, then I can do what I need to do. When it comes back, okay. So we slowly change cause and effect. What I need to adopt, what I need to abandon. Something's going wrong. Well, hang on, what have I been doing? What have I been thinking? What have I been saying? Okay, I've got to sharpen my practice. That's how it works. That's how it works. There's no big secret. Yeah.
Well, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah. That's where people think that Buddhism is just a psychology. Yes, there is that aspect of Buddhism. So Buddhism can be taken as a therapy, yeah, as a psychology, or as a religion. Here it's been given as a religion. The religious aspect encompasses all of that, the therapy and the psychology. But the people who have got a problem with religion, again, because they've had a bad experience, maybe they've given money and the priest ran off with their wife as well. It happens. And you know, all sorts of weird or wonderful things, you know, and so religion is like, no, I can understand that. So they only take it as far as psychology. That's okay too. At least you have a karmic connection with the Dharma. It's going to take a couple of lifetimes, but we'll get there. For us now, this is the lifetime that matters. So you need to absorb the Buddha's teaching. The one thing we know about death is certain, right? Taxes are not certain because certain people don't pay taxes. Okay? So death is the only thing certain, right? And the only thing that can help us at the time of death is our spiritual practice. It's the only thing you take with us. Why? Because that is the karma that you have created. If you remember, right now as we were doing this Chenrezig practice, if you had done that clearly, if you had, over a period of time, if you had strong practice, those who are familiar with Chenrezig, if you had died at that very moment with Chenrezig in your mind, your consciousness would have gone into Chenrezig's heart. That's what we call in Tibetan the power practice, transference of consciousness. You're done, you're out of here. That's it. That's it. No looking back anymore. And just what in closing, I just got to say, how we can judge ourselves whether we have renunciation or not. I usually like to test people. Of course, I test myself as well. Is by, if Buddha Chenrezig walked through that door right now, without thinking twice, if Buddha Chenrezig said, right, come on, let's go, would you go? Without thinking twice. Don't answer it for yourself. That's the litmus test as to how much attachment or non-attachment you have to this life. Let's go, right now. First of all, most people would say, well, who are you? No faith in Buddha Chenrezig. Secondly, people will say, well, what about my cat? That's it. The best practitioners are the ones who say, you know who it is, you know what they're here for, take me with you. No regrets. I've done everything in this life. There's nothing here for me. Beam me up, Scotty. That's the best practitioner. No amount of crying, begging, whatever. You love me. Well, yeah, you love me now that I'm dying, you know. See you next time. You know, I'll come back for you, you know. That's the litmus test. Now, is that doable? That's the thing here. It's like His Holiness says, you know, what? His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you know, what good is all this talk about philosophy and all these Buddhas, images, whatever? What practical benefit is this? It has to be practical, and that's what we're trying to do here. It must be based on, otherwise if it's not, then we're just wasting our time, you know, and I'm pretending to be somebody that I'm not. It must be based on logic and reason. It must be based on logic and reason. Otherwise, the Buddha himself said, you know, don't believe what I say just because I'm a Buddha, whatever it is. You know, people venerate me, whatever it is. You test my teachings. Somebody gives you a gold coin, you test that it's the real thing. If the Buddha can say that about himself, what about the rest of it? Okay, we better stop now, otherwise we'll be here for 6 months. Okay, before we go, I've got some images here of that I think might be appropriate to people. I gave you one of Chenrezig before, so I'll give you one of the Buddha here now. So if you want one, it's Buddha Chenrezig. At the back is the Shakyamuni mantra 4 times. At the back here is a forearm Chenrezig, which is